Well, hello and welcome to PM Express. It's International Labor Day, and indeed, great things have been initiated today. Looking for a review of the wages, the National Builders Corps has been launched, a review of the labor laws being instigated. All these are happening, and these are, say, big news, including a charter, a roadmap for Ghana beyond aid. Once we get out of IMF, what do we do? And so that's exactly what's on the table today. Sometimes, you know, there's those who think, well, these guys in the civil service are not delivering as much, and yet they're always agitating for more pay, more facilities, more this, more that. How about responsibility, input, and how do we measure all that? That's what we are looking at today. Don't go away. When I come back, I have two fine gentlemen who know a thing or two about unions and labors. Well, thank you very much for staying with me in the studio. Right next to me is Prince Asafo Ejay, Deputy Director of Labor Research, TUC. Prince, you're welcome.
Thank you.
And Prince, the first time as well, Ambantim, so we're going to find Prince. But my other guest has paid his Ambantims, and long ago, and Mr. Austin Gama needs no introduction at all. So Gama, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Well, I'm saying happy Labor Day to all of us.
Thank you.
Actually, let me start with you, Prince, and let's start with the labor law. And you're calling for a review?
Yeah.
A particular part, the whole section?
Not the whole law, but we are looking at those sections of the law that allows jobs to be destroyed easily. So in the last 2 or 3 years, we have situations where almost 7,000 mine workers who, under normal circumstances, had what you may classify as good jobs because they were in permanent employment, they were entitled to a lot of benefits. All of a sudden, these workers were terminated, and then what is happening now is that the previously permanent jobs are now becoming casualized, and these things, they find expressions in the way the law is crafted that made it much more easier for the employer to be able to terminate such jobs. And for us, we think that there are also social implications to this thing, because if you look at the Ghanaian economy or in the labor market, out of almost 30 million workforce, we have just about 15% who have formal employment, which we can classify as decent. Then through the operations of the law, we are seeing a reversal of these gains. So eventually, we will come to a situation where formal jobs may almost disappear through the application of the law. So we think that we need to halt it.
I mean, if I go back to this mine workers thing, you know, eventually they were selling off a portion of, you know, the work to somebody else. And are you saying that the law should be that, look, when you're selling the business on, whoever is coming to buy the business should buy the contracts of the employees as well?
No, that is not what we are saying. What we are saying is that, look, when people have permanent jobs, it should remain as such, because there are broader social and economic issues in this. As I said, already our economy is not growing in ways that create a lot of decent jobs. Now we have some amount of decent jobs, and these jobs are being destroyed. So we think that we need a law that will protect these laws.
Mr. Gama, your laws don't protect workers enough?
I'm not too sure what my brother is saying. I've been a trade unionist all my life, and I'm still. And I'm an employer today. I employ people. What is being said, I don't understand it. Are we saying that if, for instance, there is a technology or there is some development in a workplace that would curtail some jobs, it should not be done? That company will go down completely. There will be paralysis, and everybody will be the loser. There is nothing in this law from page 1 to the last page that says that somebody should be made casual. It is the dynamics that plays out. And wherever maybe the trade unions are and are working for the people that they are protecting, they have collective agreement. So what is written into the collective agreement by this law is even more powerful than the law itself. You know, so in effect, there is really nothing anybody should be talking about in this law. This is a social legislation. It's not a law that's been crafted in some corner by some lawyers hanging somewhere. It took us 4 years to write this law. And the Secretary General of the TUC and his team were part and parcel, and employers were part and parcel. It took many, 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 many years to write this law. Even the present president has his good input into it, you know. And ILO has 7 times visitation to Ghana in respect of this law. Nonetheless, if there is anything that anybody can point out that would necessitate changing it, why not? We have come to meet it, we'll die and leave it. But the issue here is this. We should not be saying that there cannot be contract workers. In fact, you are on contract of employment. He is on contract of employment. I am on contract. The president is on contract of employment for 4 years. And he'll be out if he is not re-elected. You understand? Mm-hmm. So we should not have this, you know, kind of worry that I don't agree totally with some aspects of what happened between my friends in the Ghana Mine Workers Union and the Go Face people. There could be a better way of dealing with the issue, which, like the Secretary General alluded today, is being addressed one way or the other. But this law, I don't see anything in it that anybody can point out that is the one that is creating that problem. There's nothing like that.
Prince.
Yeah. Okay. For me, the point that I'm making is that we've had this law for over a decade now, and I don't think that it's a divine law. So if through the experience you've seen that it's making it easier for employers to terminate appointment, I think that it's high time we looked at it and look at where we can actually strengthen. Because you see, this termination, it's not only about those workers. The average household size is like 4. So if you multiply 4 by the 5,000 people who were terminated, we are talking about 20,000 people who are directly affected by these things. And these things was possible through the law. The law allows employers to hire and fire and makes it much more easier. So when we are saying that, look, let's review the law and make it a bit more difficult to at least protect the current formal sector job that we have. Because now we are talking about formalizing the informal economy. You terminate these people, they all go into the informal economy. So how are we able to reverse informalization of employment if the law allows casualization to continue?
I'm sorry. Maybe this is just a way of helping. I don't mean to say anything to hurt anybody. I am saying that under this law, the collective agreement that is written or negotiated between the employer and the workers led by the union becomes more powerful than even this law. That is the way it is written here. And I have the privilege of chairing it. I'm saying, I repeat, under this law, when unions and employers meet to negotiate a collective agreement, that agreement becomes more a premier agreement and powerful and the reference and the source point at any law court than even this Labor Act. And anytime you go to the court with an issue, they will ask you, where is your collective agreement? And you send the collective agreement, open the relevant article. You open the relevant article. Between the Ghana Mine Workers Union and the Gophers as an employer, they have a collective agreement, as you know. What did the collective agreement say? If the abuse is about the process, then let's put it there. This law has done nothing. The law rather brought them together to negotiate. And the law says, you, the employer, you cannot just woke up and start firing people or decasualizing people. The law says so. The law rather puts it into your hands as trade unions to ensure that you do whatever you can. And if during the course of the negotiation, I don't agree with you that what you want us to insert in the agreement is plausible, we will go to the National Labour Commission. Then the commission will determine whether what you are saying makes sense or not, or what I'm saying makes sense or not. Otherwise, you may go to the court for interpretation of that aspect of it. So that's how it is. I don't see anything in this law that is injurious to labor. In fact, virtually everything here is strengthening their hands to do whatever they are supposed to do. It's just in conformity with the ILO conventions. Nothing more, nothing less.
Okay, I have 2 points. The first is that you mentioned how trade unions are empowered by this law, but you know that like in Ghana, union density is low. Just about 20% of the workforce have trade unions at their workplaces. So we have millions of workers who, for them, their primary source of power is this law. And beyond what happened in the mines, we have situations where, even let's go back to the mines, where you go to work today, tomorrow they terminate you, you get all your entitlement according to the collective agreement. Then the next day they hire you as a temporary worker or as a casual worker.
It is true.
Which is possible because of this law.
No.
So how come, so if you need my services, why do you terminate me as a permanent worker and then the next day you make me casual, if really you need my services?
No, that is not the issue, my brother.
But that is the issue.
No.
And they could only do that because of...
where in this law? Where in this law?
It gives the employer the right to hire and fire.
No.
And this employer
Yes,
will hire you today, fire you tomorrow, and hire you again as
Look,
casual.
let's throw this law into the garbage. Let it not be a law in Ghana again. I will still hire people. Okay? My workers, I have 30 workers. Very notable people. And I can tell you that they are not just going to be thrown about just anyhow, because I know what to do.
Yeah, but what about those who don't know what to do?
Multimedia here, they are not trade union. They are not in union. Multimedia, they are not unionized. They are not firing people left, right, center here.
No, but the workers you have are not the most vulnerable workers. We are talking about those who are very vulnerable, who don't know their rights, who don't know their entitlement.
So you are not there, then you are not the one managing them. You see, the trade unions, I'm a trade unionist. I'm sure you know. Saturday as a non-working day, I led the action in bringing it about. What I want to draw attention to is this. I'm telling you that if there are vulnerable people somewhere that are not members of the union, first of all, you have no entitlement directly to them. You have entitlement to them at National Tripartite Committee to talk about the generality of conventions and recommendations and so forth and so on, and the standards as the case may be. So that way, then you have the platform, and then the government of the day will ensure that they promote that aspect of it through other things. But this law has nothing to do with those vulnerable people. The law didn't say that they shouldn't. Whether this law is in place or not, I will hire people.
And fire people.
People in Makola, they are not trade unionists. But the woman in Makola is protected by this same law. The Kayayu, who is carrying the thing, if you make your hair beautiful like Aisha's hair, and Aisha can't carry tomatoes on his head, the woman will negotiate with Aisha how much you should pay.
How come the law could not protect the 5,000 mine workers?
What are you saying? Should this law be the one? The law is not a human being.
Prince, let me come in here.
All right,
Assuming you set up your business, I'm a bit confused. You set up your business. Obviously, you set up a business for profit.
Yeah.
So if it gets to a point where, look, if I still need your services, but not on this basis, I need your service on that basis. I don't know. I mean,
so how come that you don't need my service on this base, but rather on the other basis?
Because it suits me better. But you're not obliged to still work for me.
Yeah,
you can
course.
say, well, I don't want your agreement, so I'm walking away.
We treat, if you take conventional textbook, they treat labor as part of factors of production. But labor is not like any other factor of production. Labor is human. So you just can't terminate people, and there are a lot of social consequences that to termination of appointment.
And now let me help you this way. I'm very close to the Ghana Mine Workers Union. I negotiate with them And it was said today at the May Day. You know, so it has nothing, absolutely nothing. And let me repeat here. Employers have the right to employ people in any way possible to run the business so it will not paralyze. So are the people who are even there earning that, that's what some people say. So I want to say that we should be very, very careful not to create the impression that the law is the one. It is not true, 100% it is not true.
Okay, now
I refuse it.
Another big issue that came today, Leonardo launches the Nation Builders Corp to employ some 100,000 graduates. Again, as usual, there are those who are happy and there are those who think, well, it's not enough. What's the TUC's position?
Yeah, so our first position is that it's very welcoming thing, because we see that over the years, out of all those who enter the labor market every year, just about 5% are able to get jobs in the formal sector. Majority of the young people find employment in the informal sector, and especially for graduates, they spend quite a long time, sometimes over 3 years before they get their first job. And as you spend so much time without working, there is some deterioration in your skills. So for me, or for labor, such a move that will ensure that about 100,000 people get jobs is really welcoming. It's a good relief for them and for their families.
But what would you say about that job? It's not a permanent job. So is it the creation of this law?
No, so the point is that sometimes it's from no jobs to bad job. It's really good to some people who have never had employment. But our difficulty is when you have a good job and then it is being casualized. That must be averted. So we are trying to protect jobs, but we should create additional ones as well.
Mm. Well, I'm highly excited, to be honest with you, that our brothers and sisters who've completed school all these years and have had no job, today we have at least 100,000, all things being equal, coming on board. Even for the 3 years, at least a step is a step towards success. If they have a feel of the world of work, some of them could branch to multimedia, some of them could branch to Game and Game, some of them could branch to work in the TUC, at the research department. So I don't see anything wrong with this. We should all support it. And the next stage is what matters. But the
argument is that the pay is not enough.
It may not be enough, but it's better than a didida. You know, it's better we eat now, have something to live with, and than having nothing at all. I think that with time will take care of itself. All of us, we are all in diverse ways contributing in any way possible to help the economy of this country to grow. Once it's reasonably transformed, we will see the impact of it in the lives of those people. They will be transformed into another area of the economy. So it's a step. It may not be it all, but at least it's a beginning.
Mr. Gabe, the pension thing keeps coming up and up and up and up, and now they're calling for a review, Tier 2 pension review. What's your position on that?
Well, I won't call it position, but I have unpleasant duty of speaking on the subject matter. I represented NAT on the commission in writing the pension scheme. And it took us also many years to complete it during President Kufuor's time. It came on board during President Mills' time. The implementation brouhaha has rather been the bane, just like we're talking about the law. It's about implementation. It's people who lack knowledge as to how to go about this thing that's creating the problem. You know, the actuarial study we did at the time of writing this pension scheme clearly shows that a laborer who was earning the minimum, barest minimum, even at that time, when he worked for 10 years and is going, he will have a lump sum of about 10,000 Ghana cedis, which is very reasonable, you know. And then he will move on to SNIT, where he'll be earning his monthly SNIT. What we need to do is for SNIT board, maybe the president can because they are calling for it, he can set up a small committee, they can look at it. After that, it will go to him. It may say, SNIT board, who is managing the tier 1, should ensure that the calculation methodology is changed. Perhaps instead of setting up a committee, it could have been the SNIT board that will be tasked, where we have all the bodies represented there. Organized labor is properly represented on the SNIT board. So everything that goes on there, rightly or wrongly, they are part and parcel of it. Employers are part and parcel of it. Government is part and parcel of it. So I do not see any special committee on even the tier 1. What we need is for SNIT management board to ensure that they work out how they can enhance the pay that gets to the people.
Could it be
benefits.
a question of trust?
Yes.
I mean, could it be a question of trust where they don't trust that, look, these guys will do a proper thing. Let's find a fresh committee to sit on.
Let me repeat. I say organized labor. I do not think they have just 2 members there. They have close to 3 members on that SNIT board.
So they are part of it.
So they are really there, and they know what is good. And I have confidence in them. Particularly the Secretary General is a fantastic gentleman. And employers have a representative there. Government has a representative. In fact, the Ministry of Finance has very strong representation there. So what is the problem? If it is the calculation, let them do the calculation and enhance it. But when it comes to tier 2, that's the beauty of the pension scheme. It is an enterprise-based scheme. So multimedia, your contribution into tier 2 is lodged with a fund manager and a custodian bank, and therefore the information about the doings of the fund is known to you people here. If you are representative on the internal fund management board, sees that the fund manager is veering off from the original terms of agreement with him as contained in the rules, you clear him off and bring in the one who can mobilize and make the thing more productive for you. That is what is intended to be achieved. So I'm really surprised about the pressure that is being brought on the presidency that it should be the tier 2. Tier 2 is done and sealed with them, with the working people themselves. I have workers who also contribute towards SNIT and have tier 2. They have appointed a fund manager, and they send the money to the fund manager who is investing it in their name. And so their future is guaranteed. That is how it is. What are we to review about it?
What are we to review
about it?
All right, okay,
so we have a number of issues of pensions as they are now. First is in terms of administration. So we are concerned about some kind of investment decisions and how they have applied the contributions of pensioners. And Mr. Gamet said that labor is part of it, and therefore we shouldn't call. But I think that true, we are part of it. And now currently the TUC representative is the Deputy Secretary General, not the Secretary General. But the point is that if you are part of an organization through representation, and you think that you are unable to make the necessary changes at the level of decision making, we have to take the engagement a notch higher. In terms of the SNIT issues too, the reason I disagree with Mr. Gamet that SNIT board cannot review it is that if you look at how they calculate the lump sum, a lot of it is in the law. But all of a sudden, if you look at their formula, you will see that they introduce a factor they call annuity factor, which is not specified in the law. So how come that you use the law in the calculation, then along the line you introduce a factor which is not in the law? Exactly. So we are saying, and the point is that you are recommending that we can talk to the board to review it. But these are the people who are making such decisions and introducing the factors. So how do you get them to review a decision that they are using that affect the workers? So we think that in some ways the calculations that are done by a SNIT is also problematic. And of course, beyond the third tier and how we are also concerned, especially the way the third tier, the second tier scheme, of public sector workers was quite mismanaged for a long time.
Yeah,
so
I agree. I support that. And fortunately, as the President said today, and also alluded to by the Secretary General of the TUC, the funds have been transferred at long last. So we have taken course. We are on course now. So why do we want reversal? At the administration aspects you have said, I 100% agree. there should constantly be review of people who are properly, who know, who have the understanding as to what should be done. But let me say this. Under the Labor Act, Section 113, determining the functions of the National Tripartite Committee, the TUC has a strong base there that you can even discuss this pension thing you are talking about at the National Tripartite Committee meeting. And I'm not talking about when we are going to set up national daily minimum wage. The law is very clear. The law gives you power, tremendous power, to call for a meeting without even the consent of the other people. You have to call for a meeting. If they say no, you report their conduct to the National Labour Commission, which you selected the people to be there. So what is the problem? The problem is that this country, we must stop dislocating our laws. The law is clear. Both people in government, employers, and organized labor, we must ensure that we apply the law as it is intended to be applied. And we are not dead. We are all alive now, thank God. So why don't we talk to one another?
But sir, what if, so we all agree that the application of the law is difficult. Probably the difficulty in the application might come from the way the law is crafted itself. So we have to look at the law. Well, if you have a law which is difficult to apply, then there must be something with that law.
Mention one portion that is difficult to apply, and let me help you. Just one, not two. Because if you mention two, it will be too much.
Okay.
One.
Okay, so now if you take, for instance, the law on SNIT about the calculation of pension. So where do they get the annuity factor?
So that is, so they're talking about the pension law, not the Labor Act. The pension...
All these things are related. So no. For labor, we have a set of issues, mostly focusing on those laws that have direct impact on our well-being. So be it labor law, pensions law, all these things are issues that we think that, look, we've applied these laws for a while, we've seen challenges, so let's look at these laws.
If they give you the law to write and you finish writing, next day you will change it.
And when we are reviewing a law, it doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to change it. We are looking at areas where application is difficult, and therefore we need to strengthen it. We are looking at lacunas where we can fail. So it's not that we are just going to throw the law.
Lana, let me tell you something to this nation. Since 1958, that's how de Gaulle got out of office in France. And today, the violence in France today, even today, May Day, is no joke. And it's all about labor law. You see, we cannot eat or have our cake and still be eating it, or eat our cake and still have it. We must be very careful in this world. You can't change one dot, comma, in France. Dot, comma, you can't change it. This took 4 years, and we traveled with it worldwide and organized seminars and brought ILO 7 times. It passed through 2 governments. Let's be very careful what we are proposing in this country. We should not have things our way. It should be a country all of us should be interested in, and not think about ourselves only.
So is it time that maybe organized labor sit and then discuss, because it looks like this, I don't know, is it an issue of trust?
Yes, there's an element of mistrust. There's an element of people not having adequate understanding and appreciation of the dynamics that is coming on board across the world. This is a rapidly changing technologies world today. You can go to a bank today and deposit your money without human beings present. What are we talking about? We must know what is going on. The dynamics have changed. And the players, our investors must change the dynamics of teaching as well. The trade unions must change the dynamics. Employers must change the dynamics. And the law must also change the dynamics. I agree. If the technology has come to displace the law, why not? But it's been written focused with that. But I'm not saying that we can even tore it into pieces and do a new thing tomorrow morning. That way I'll be in this country, God willing, if the rapture didn't take place, and see what will happen.
So we are not saying that we should tear the law in pieces, but even the Constitution itself was reviewed.
We haven't reviewed it yet. The Constitution can be reviewed. It will take through a whole lot of bunch of things to be done. I think that the law, I'm not protecting the law for anything just because I was the chairman of the committee. No, God forbid. My point of view here is this. I've heard this thing. I've sat with some of your senior colleagues, and I've asked them, what do you want to be changed? They mentioned something, and then I opened a place. They say, well, we didn't see it that way. So I'm trying to say that this is a social legislation. It's not a legalistic law that would need some rocket science to apply it. No. This is a social legislation.
Mr. Ghana, are there any plans for, i.e. a consultant like you, to sit with the big boys of organized labor and say, look, let's go through this book and see, what the challenge is?
Every day I negotiate with them. I'm a consultant to a number of companies. I negotiate with them on daily basis. Last Friday we finished some negotiation. We negotiate constantly with the Mine Workers Union, with the ICU, with UNICOF, with various unions. We negotiate with them. I engage them. They are my best friends. We talk about this thing my brother is talking about. As soon as you met him, you said, oh, my friend, you are from the TUC. I remember you now. So they are friends. I respect them a lot, and I can guarantee you it's something we say every day. So when I heard him talking about it, I said, oh, thank God, today I will know what it is. Casualization, we don't need this law to talk about casualization. Act 299 of 1965, which when I was a trade unionist we used, was so much written in such a way that it was when Kwame Nkrumah, the trade union supported the coming on board of democracy in Ghana here, for that matter. So even the Secretary General of the TUC at one time, who was Ambassador Plenipotential, okay? So what I want to draw attention to right now is that the world has changed. Employers must change. Governments keep changing. Trade unions keep changing. And we must ensure that the right thing is done. If there is any aspect of this law that is of concern to them, they know where to go. They should take it to the National Tripartite Committee meeting. Not when they are determining national daily minimum wage, because I have read it to you. We've created it, section 113, the whole world. This is the first time across the whole world that you have a tripartite committee legalized. The whole world. Ghana is the only place. So what are we talking about?
But, sir, the tripartite does not have power to review the law. What we are saying is that, look, let's open a discussion about the laws that has implications
I
in
agree.
employment.
And I'm saying that's the starting point. The starting point is that it says in section 113, it says, advise the tripartite, that body, is to advise on employment and labor market issues, including labor laws, international labor standards, industrial relations, and occupational safety and health. My friend, I'm talking to you.
So there's a window. Let's move into the review of the wage structure, where are we going to review it, upwards, downwards? Funny enough, we can review it downwards. But let me take a quick break, and when we come back, we see exactly what we're going to do with regards to wage structure, both in the public and private service. Well, matter of organized labor is not a small matter at all. But we are now looking at a committee to set up and review the wage structure. I mean, we've just gone through a bit about settle on single spine. So if you educate us, what's this all about?
Okay, so one of the goals of the single spine was to address a number like low wage in the public sector and also the inequalities in the public sector wage administration. But what we are calling for is beyond just the public sector, because the public sector workers are just about 600,000 in the country. There are much more workers in the private sector.
Soon to be 700,000.
Yes, probably, if you add these ones to it. Yeah. But now we see that wages in Ghana are really low in relative term and absolute term, and there is a history to it. right at the colonial time, they called something target workers. When the British hire people, the workers will come there, and when they achieve specific targets, then they leave. So they needed to keep them there for a long time. So basically what they did was to reduce the wages so that it will take you much longer time to get a target that we are looking for. So they remained. And then at independence, we realized that we went a bit more socialist. So wages were low. So we were basically giving social wages where the levels were low, but they were compensated for with other public services, which were also priced at lower levels. Now we have moved into a market economy where we expect workers to pay market prices for goods and services, including public services. But now our past is still with us in terms of levels of wages. So I had discussion with some workers, and they said that, look, if you are not careful, even half of your wage may go just into buying fuel if you live in Accra. So the point is that, okay, if we are going into a market economy and we expect consumers to pay market prices for public services, including utilities, then we should also expect that workers are paid market values in terms of wages. So that is where we are now.
And this is both private and...
It's a good call, except that every coin has two sides. And the Secretary General, I'm quoting the Secretary General and the President today at the May Day rally. The Secretary General said, we must get away from the lackadaisical attitude towards work. We must also ensure that people become productive and eschew lateness to work. And I congratulate him for that, because that's a clarion call from some of us all this while. The President equally alluded to it, even at the last May Day and today also. All I want to say is this. Before anybody can pay any meaningful wage, the approach simply is we must have a written policy and a written strategy which you must share with your working people, and you set targets for people. They must accomplish these targets so that you can sell your produce and your services. That is increasing productivity both in the farms, in the firms, in government offices. Otherwise, our productivity will be narrow. Therefore, they cannot increase pay to the extent people want it to be. It's not possible. It is what your customers buy and bring in that the income will be fairly distributed through negotiation. So that's why, back to your labor law, your favorite labor law, Section 97 of the labor law is very clear that both parties should share relevant information regarding the way the productivity matters of the company and all government services are going. Government one is normally open to, even is brought to Parliament in the open. We all get to know. Private ones, people are sharing information from time to time. I lead my people I negotiate for to share the information as well. Now, once you share that information, it's like, let me use this example. Indeed, if you are a married man, I see your ring, and if your wife knows how much you earn, can your wife ask you more than you earn? Obviously not. So employers must share information with their working people so that they can have a fair distribution of the income. So that they remember, we have to train and retrain people, tool them with skills, and ensure that they have the tools and equipment to work with. And we are living in a changing economy. We are living in a world where we have to sell our services, and we must be competitive. So how much we can afford to pay is a subject matter. When we share the information, then we come to terms with it. Confront it yourselves. So it's going to be paying people based on their contribution, not just a question of we have all come to work, so pay us, everybody 10% across the board. That is not motivating enough.
Prince, I'm picking productivity. That, look, okay, fine, we need to now pay, capitalist pay. Therefore, there must be capitalist output.
Yeah. But the definition that have been given so far on productivity is quite narrow. We are only making reference to labor productivity, but productivity goes beyond the worker.
Yeah.
So you should create the conditions that will enable the worker to give out his or her best.
Exactly.
So, now we know that you are good at moderating programs, but if really when we came in and the lights were off and things were horrible, your best output may not give us the desired result. So part of productivity lies with the employer. And I think that if you're an employer and you hire somebody, you have the right to demand that the person does his or her best. And by demanding that, you also ought to provide the tools that the person will need. So in the debate of productivity, we tend to narrow it, sometimes blaming too much on the workers.
As simple as a son, I mean, what will be a fair wage then?
So a fair wage is a wage, of course. When you're talking about fair wage, you talk about ability to pay. So the employer should be able to pay. And also a fair wage is the wage that will enable the worker and his or her family. In Ghana, the average household size is about 4. So a wage that should be able to provide certain basic acceptable standard of life for the worker and the family.
When you were saying we should go by capital this, you are still going into the traditional.
No, I'm not going to the traditional. What I'm saying is that, look, if now we are hiking prices of public...
So bring forth 2, don't go 4. The other point is that what you have said is in your favorite law. Let me read it to you. According to the law, section 9, it is the duty of the employer, when they employ you, to provide work and not just coming to hang around, and appropriate raw materials, machinery, equipment, and tools. So everything is here. It is when you go to the negotiation table, this becomes a minimum standard which you must leverage on and ensure that the atmosphere is conducive. If the light should go off now, there must be a trigger of another light coming on. Therefore, do not render him inoperative. Yeah. That is the angle from which you are coming from. Every employer who employs is interested in making profit. And therefore, they must service the customers that give them the money. Because any managing director signing check means the customer is the one signing the check. That's the meaning. And therefore, there is no narrow definition, and there can never and there should never be any narrow definition of productivity, limiting it to labor productivity. But that is not the case.
But the debate in Ghana, most of the time focus on labor productivity. Workers are lazy, workers are that, but we now know, and we've always known, not that we now, we've always known that, look, employers have a duty to ensure that workers give up their best by providing the right incentives, the right environment, and the right
But tools. They do. Without that, you are not in business. There will be paralysis. You see, when we were, as if we were joking, the consequence is, you see the caricature of Ghana Airways Rekiti hanging there, they are pounding fufu inside. You know, that is the consequence. If you play with such things, if unions and employers are not sitting down to have a conversation, there shouldn't be any debate. There should not be any argument. Otherwise, there will be a winner and a loser. They should have a simple conversation, brainstorm, generate options, come to consensus as to the way forward will be. Otherwise, you suffer paralysis. And that's the consequence. We used to have several companies in this country. They are all dead and buried because of some of these things. We don't share information. The law has provided it for you now, and we still are struggling with it. Employers, government as employer, government has 2 hats. As a political figure that legislate and ensure that things are done from political perspective, and also work as employer. Now, government at the time, speaking as employer, put on the hat of employer and not as government. And therefore, they have a conversation and discuss the issues that are affecting working people. And I support that. I've chaired that kind of meeting before. That is the way it's supposed to be. You know, and I believe that with the organized labor, you know, the way the Secretary General spoke today, I'm really, really happy. And I pray that we would put it into action.
So was it going to be 10% cross-board or 20% cross-board? Is there anything?
We think that we must look at like remuneration in general to look at what is actually fair, that employers are able to pay, and what workers can also live on and give up their best. So we need to have a conversation about that, and both parties will agree.
As to where we need to.
I'm not a fan of an across-board salary. The law even don't allow that, and general practice.
Criteria
For
measuring their
Of course, I'm a change agent practitioner, so I can't cheat my workers.
With my last minute left, would you advocate for hourly pay? Is it ever going to happen? Hourly pay.
So we don't have the infrastructure for that now.
That's what
we don't have the infrastructure for that now. And in America, they can afford to do that. In Japan, they can afford to do that. In other countries, they can afford to do that. Here, we don't have the infrastructure for it. And so if we introduce it, it can work to a point and there'll be confusion. So what we can do is to manage that. Nothing stops an employer from introducing that if he so thinks that is the way he can best serve the system. However, ensure that you have the infrastructure, you educate the people, they have a buy into it so that they know what they are about to do. There's nothing wrong introducing it.
Are you for?
I think that it's implicit in the way we pay people already. So if I'm paid, let's say, 2,000 at the end of the month, and we know that we work 40 hours, you can actually calculate.
No, but if you haven't done the 40 hours, you still
no. But there are instances where if you are sanctioned as a worker, they actually will take out some number of days that you did not work and then take it out of your salary.
It's not a very common phenomenon.
It's implicit in it.
That was Labor Day, but as you can see, it's progress. They are not sleeping, and I think it's for the new ones coming up to come and enjoy better pay, better pensions, and all that. Well, I say thank you very much, gentlemen. And to you at home, I say thank you for watching. You know what? We'll be back to do this all over again.